everybody and welcome back to the FPL Family YouTube channel. I'm Sam and today I'm going to be talking you through my next draft and how my thoughts have kind of changed. It has been a few weeks since we released our first drafts video and since I sat and picked a team with you for game week 1 and also for beyond, but I've had a little bit more time to kind of look at the fixtures, to take in the fixture ticker and to think about those players in attacking positions and those players in defensive positions. And of course, over the last few weeks, Lee and I have been taking you on a series of deep dive videos looking at each Premier League club in turn to think about what the best assets are for that particular club. Now, of course, we will be covering all the remaining clubs. As this video goes out, we've just done Leicester yesterday and we've got a Liverpool video coming out tomorrow on the channel. So we have covered a large percentage of the teams already, but of course we will be finishing these off before the season starts in August, one every other day between now and the beginning of August. So that's exciting. And I think in doing that, that's kind of given me a bit more clarity as to which players I'm really wanting to invest in. Plus, I've done another series of videos looking at the best picks. And so far, we've released videos on the best rotating pairs in defence. We've released videos on the best premium picks for the early part of the season, as well as looking at the best picks from the Euro finalists. And over the next few weeks, we're going to see increasing videos on the best picks in certain areas, the best enablers, the best midfield, mid-range prize players. And of course, in doing that, that will mean that my team gets tinkered with and gets changed. So just to remind you of where it was a few weeks ago, this was my original first draft. Sanchez and Gaeta in goal, rotating 4.5 options in defence in goalkeeper. And I like that. I really like to start the season with options in terms of goalkeepers. A backline consisting of Dean, Cooper, Diaz, Shaw and Serralto from Watford. Midfield of Basuma, always. Rafinha, Salah, Jota and obviously Bruno Fernandes. And then up top, Ollie Watkins, Ivan Toney and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Now, when I set this team up, I was kind of looking to do a number of things. I was looking to chase the fixtures in terms of making sure that I hit as many good options in both attack and defence and across those positive runs of fixtures that we have to start the season, but also going with confidence players, players that played really well last season, players that were on good form, players that have some Premier League experience wherever possible, although of course with the new boys, I'm looking for players that have had good seasons in the Championship consistently, because that's something that if they've got consistency in the Championship, we're more likely to see that reflective moving forward. Now, of course, with Watford, I feel more confident in owning those players because they are Premier League. They're not exactly new to the Premier League or new to Premier League football, and they've got a number of players there who have played a lot of Premier League seasons. So I was more confident picking them perhaps than Brentford. However, Tony's record in the Championship was just second to none and he was one that I just couldn't overlook. But there's been a lot of movement in the transfer window. We've seen some big players making moves already, and we've also had a lot of rhetoric and rumour about some other players making moves and going to either other Premier League sides or sometimes leaving the game altogether and travelling abroad. Now, as I was going to record this video, this draft video, I sat down to kind of have a little look at my team and think about what I might want to change. And then the big news from Brighton came that Matt Ryan had left the club, gone off to play international football abroad at Real Sociedad. So in doing that, leaving obviously Sanchez as the confirmed number one at Brighton. And as a result of that kind of security that comes around Sanchez, I saw that as an opportunity to just double up at the back with Brighton and go with their other keeper as my spare. So kind of heir and spare situation, which we had for a bit of last season with Steer and Martinez at Aston Villa. But this time we've got real security because there isn't another keeper that could potentially come and get in the way of this. And in doing that, that's allowed me to have an additional 0.5 million, and that additional 0.5 million does go a long way to creating what looks on paper to be a better FPL team. Now, this is my second draft, as you can see on the screen. We've got Sanchez and Steele there in goal. I'm really confident with those two. I don't see that changing. I think that there is going to be a lot of changing that goes on across the rest of this squad, but I don't see there being a changing goalkeeper position. I can't see me going into the season with anything other than those two. And in part, that's because when we look at the season ticker for defence, we see Brighton sitting nice and pretty at the top. And you know me by now, you know how I like to play FPL. I like to set my team up with the long haul in mind. I don't go for just let's get as many points on the board in game week 1 as possible, although of course that is really nice. But I want to make sure that my game week 2, game week 3, game week 4 results build upon something from game week 1. And therefore I'm looking across the first 5 game weeks at the moment, but over the next week or so I'm going to be starting to push that out even further and looking at over the next 8 game weeks. Do I still have a set and forget keeper option there that I would be happy with? And if I do, then saving myself 0.5 by going with the Sanchez and Steele combination feels like a really good idea. So going back to my draft then, the other change that I've made is I'm still keeping Lucadinho at the moment. Obviously coming back from international duty, hasn't really yet had time to kind of bed in with the Everton side again in their pre-season under the new manager in Benitez. But I do think that I want to keep him going into the season because when you look at the overall fixture ticker, Everton sit at the top. If you've watched my rotating defenders video from earlier on in the season, you'll know that actually Leeds look like really good defensive options. We saw at the beginning of last season that they weren't exactly a safe pair of hands in terms of clean sheets. I think that's the best way to put it. But as the season went on, they did get better, and I suspect that in their second Premier League season, they will have a better start defensively. I'm partly picking Cooper because he rotates so nicely with the Brighton defenders. And obviously I haven't got a Brighton defender because I've got the double up in defence. I've got the double up in goal. But there is potential there, I think, for having a Brighton defender if we want to make some changes away from the goalkeeper. So a rotating pair of Cooper and probably Lamptey would be the way that I would go with Brighton. But I do want to go with Serralto as well. That means, if you go back to the rotating pairs video, pairing him with a Burnley defender, and Charlie Taylor will probably be my go-to there. So I can see there being some changes there in that defence, but the main change that I've made already is to swap Ruben Dias for Van Dijk. And in part, if we go back to the season ticker for defence, in part the reason that I've done that is because we see Manchester City nowhere on this defensive schedule in terms of these first opening 5 game weeks. But we do see Liverpool up there in second. And looking at those opening fixtures, apart from that game against Chelsea in game week 3, there's potential that there's at least 3 clean sheets in there. The Leeds game slightly more challenging, but Norwich, Burnley and Crystal Palace, I can see Liverpool keeping clean sheets there. Whereas in the opening game week of the season, I had Dias in that position before. He's of course got Spurs. I'm not sure that there's a clean sheet there, but yet we remain to see what happens with Harry Kane, of course, and therefore what happens with Spurs moving forward in terms of those attacking positions. But because Liverpool have such a good defensive start to the season, I've kind of thought, well, maybe it's Dias that makes way to bring in a Liverpool defender. Now, I'd ideally like that to be Robertson or Trent, but getting up to them from Van Dijk is going to be tough. I've got to pay an extra 0.5 for Robertson and an extra 1 if I want to go to Trent. Now, of course, they do have far more attacking threat last season. Trent, look, they're both going to get attacking returns. I think for Robertson last season it was 1 goal and 9 assists, and for Trent last season it was 2 goals and 8 assists. So they've got the potential there, definitely. But Van Dijk, of course, was injured for most of last season, so no attacking returns for him. But that doesn't mean there won't be some this season. His headed threat and his aerial ability is second to none across that Liverpool side, and therefore he is one that I think could be a good option. Although I would like to find a little bit of money to upgrade him. One of the big transfers for me this summer, although it won't go down as a big transfer on paper, is the Billy Gilmour loan. That suddenly makes that midfielder spot even more attractive than Basuma. Sorry about that, Eves, but I think Billy Gilmour's going there to replace Ollie Skipp, who's not going back out on loan this season and is going to be staying with Spurs. And therefore having Gilmour as what you would expect to be a starter at Norwich, even though the fixtures are dreadful to start the season, I think he is a bit of a no-brainer. For now, the rest of those players have remained untouched, but this is kind of where I'm thinking. Serralto, I think I do want to rotate him with a Burnley player, so that is potentially something that's going to happen, and I might take some additional money out of defence. We've got some rumours about Digne and that Everton may be strengthening their back line, and if that happens, then we might get a slightly cheaper option than Dean. And if I can save another 0.5 by going for a slightly cheaper Everton defender, That will enable me to have Van Dijk become Robertson, maybe Van Dijk become Trent. So that is something that I am really kind of pondering on and thinking about. The other question is, do I want to go with the double up in the Liverpool midfield as well as a defender? Well, on paper, yes, because if we look at the season ticker for attack, we still see Liverpool in there in third place with their fixtures the way that they are. Now, the one thing that concerns me here is I don't currently have a single Manchester City player in my team. And that's in part because I'm waiting to see what happens in the transfer window. At 11 million, Sterling is going to be budget breaking to get him in. Gundogan obviously taking a bit of a price jump this time around, but did get 13 goals last season, so he's one that I am thinking about. It needs a Man City player, is the reality. Whether they come in full game week 1, I'm not yet sure. I think I'm going to kind of wait until closer to the season starting, and probably when we do my next draft video, I'll let you know my thoughts on how and where I'm going to fit a Man City player in. But I do know that this draft does not have enough Manchester City in it, and it is something that I have to build upon. This draft also still has no Spurs in it, and when we look at the season ticker for defence, Spurs are riding quite high on that after that Manchester City game. So I'm also keeping a very, very close eye on the transfer window and what happens with Spurs. They're getting highly linked with Connor Cody. So let's see what happens there in terms of, does he come to the club? Or do we just go with Reguilon or Doherty, depending on what happens, because it looks very much like Aurier is making way at Spurs this summer. So that's kind of where we are with my second draft. Obviously, as I say, over the next few weeks, there'll be more draft videos and we'll be doing some live streams talking through our plans and our drafts. But 3 changes made since the last one. I think they've strengthened the team, if anything, although they've weakened it in terms of no Manchester City. And that is something that I really do need to think about. Let me know what you're planning to do with your FPL teams. Give me your drafts in the descriptions and I'll try my best to give you my feedback on what I think about them. Although if there's loads of them like there was last time, I might struggle, but the rest of the community are out there to help as well. And before you go, if you've enjoyed the video, give me a like. If you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button and I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.